Lori here. I'm back. I have recovered. I'm feeling much better. I haven't been filming sit down videos because I haven't been feeling my best. I'm recovering from a sinus infection. We're also heading into Bookmas in mid-December, so I am trying to get some pre-Bookmas content out for you all because I like you guys. So, yeah. So, I am going to wrap up some of the top spooky and creepy reads I have read between September and October. I'm still reading a bunch of creepy reads, but I tend to, in November and December, focus on wrapping up my TBR games, wrapping up my planners and stuff like that. So these are the spooky reads that I have on my TBR that I have read that I did really enjoy. If you want to see all the spooky and creepy books I've read, you can definitely check out my wrap-ups, but these are the ones that stood out to me. I'm going to divide it into two sections, one that the books that came out in 2021 and some older reads that are just ones that I have really liked and I read recently. So let's get into it. Three young adult books that have captured my fancy. The first one that I read relatively recently was The Nature of Witches by Rachel Griffins. I really liked this book, though it was very unique. It sort of reminded me a tad of the structure of the Casey West book that was set over all the year. But I really liked it. I know some people struggled with the main character a little bit, with Clara a little bit, because they thought she was really unlikable. I didn't see her that way, but if you haven't heard, this book follows a girl named Clara, and she is an Everwitch. And what an Everwitch does is she can control all the magics. Normally, you're a witch and you have control of one magic, but Clara is an Everwitch, so she has control of them all. And with the impending climate change crisis, these witches are being kind of put through the bringer. Clara is a little bit of a broken character at the start of this book. Her power being an Everwitch makes her very, very unpredictable, and she has led to the death of quite a few people that she cares about. But she's forced in this year to kind of confront her power when the climate crisis gets worse. There is a really, really sweet romance in this. There's also a very big talk about community and lack of community that I really liked. I really enjoyed this book and gave it 4 stars. I know she has a book coming out next year that I'm also going to be definitely going to be reading. But this one did focus on the climate change crisis in a way that was witchy and supernatural, but also super poignant to our real life. And I really enjoyed it. I also really liked her writing style. So this is definitely one that if you've not picked it up, I would definitely recommend. Another book that I picked up relatively recently was All These Bodies by Kendare Blake. This is a book that I read before I read Anna Dressed in Blood, but this one is set in the murder of 1958. You follow a character named, what is his name? I don't know what his name is. I cannot think of it. But you follow a male lead character, and his goal is to be a reporter, but he kind of gets sucked up in 1938 when a series of gruesome murders sweep the Midwest and all the victims are drained of blood. A 15-year-old girl is arrested, and I think his name is Michael. He has to sort of uncover what happened and why was this girl committing these murders. It was very interesting, a very, very fast-paced read. I love male main characters. You rarely ever get them in YA, so I loved it. I thought the relationship between the main character and the young girl was really interesting. It also had an interesting narrative style because he was telling you this story from the present, which I really liked. And I just thought it was a fast-paced story. One that I sort of flew through. I read this the weekend after I went to Comic-Con because I met up with my friend. And I flew through this book. I really enjoyed it. It talked about the vampire myth in a really interesting way. And I really enjoyed it. So I wound up giving this one 4 stars for review. And it was one that I really, really liked. The last young adult book I'm going to chat about in this video is actually a sequel, and it's The Hawthorn Legacy by Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Here is a photo. I would describe as very twisty-turny. So the first book that I also read last year was The Inheritance Game, and you follow a main character named Avery. She gets the shock of her life when after her mother dies, she winds up getting bequeathed in a will with someone she's never met before, and they're called the Hawthorns. She winds up saying that she is basically going to be the person that's going to get this inheritance. She has no idea why she is going to get this inheritance. She is not related to them as far as she knows, but there are 4 boys that are obsessed with mysteries, and they sort of team up to sort of work together to figure out why she's being inherited. The second book is a series of twisty, turny truths, and at the end, you don't know what is happening. I really liked it. I love books about mysteries and like really unique houses. It was great. It was a really, really fast-paced read. One that I sort of went in with one expectation and came out with a totally different expectation. The final book comes out next year. I am really excited for it. The romance definitely built up in this one. There was some really unexpected twists and turns. That's what Jennifer Lynn Barnes does so well. She creates super well, like super good twists and turns that you never see coming. Her past series have blown my mind, so I don't know what's going to happen in Final Gambit, but I'm really excited for it. So that's the last young adult book I'm going to talk about in this mini section. The next two books I'm going to talk about are adult romances. The first one that I read was The Ex-Hex by Erin Sterling. This book was just fun. I think it reminded me a lot of Stars Hollow, but you basically follow this girl named Vivian Jones, and 9 years ago, after she breaks up with her boyfriend, she and her cousin, they are witches. They wind up getting drunk one night, and they wind up cursing this guy named Reese. But the curse doesn't come to effect 7 years later when Reese returns to town, to this small town sort of like Stars Hollow, and that curse winds up running rampant, and it's just them sort of forced to work together to sort of uncover this curse and figure out what was happening. But there's also a lot of hurt feelings because they still really do like each other. I like that this book was also dual point of views. The one thing I wish is that we would have seen them in the past a little bit more, but other than that, I really liked it. It reminded me of Stars Hollow, and it was a really, really fun read. I wonder if we're gonna get more books set in this world, because I would definitely pick it up. But it wasn't like my favorite book ever, but it was a very, very fun fall read, very, very witchy, and I really, really liked it. And then the other book that I read was Witch Please by Anne Aguirre. Here's a photo. Another like witchy themed read that I also really liked. I will say this one was very sex heavy in contrast to The Ex-Hex. It was very, very like sex heavy. Those books aren't always my favorite, but the romance in this book was definitely a highlight. You have dual point of view characters, which if you know anything about me and romance tropes, I love that. I feel like you really get to know both characters and you sort of feel the romance on both sides of it. But this book follows a young girl, or like a young woman. She runs a magical shop with her cousin, and she is sort of a technopath. That's the best way I could describe it. Like, she's very good at fixing things. And then the other point of view is a baker. He lives with his younger sister, and their paths just keep crossing. And it is a really, really fun read. I would say it's probably more like friends to lovers, like friends to more, I guess. I did really like it. Though there was also like a side plot that I think is going to be explored. And the second book is going to be a series, which I am all here for. I really liked the romance. I think the male baker was definitely like a favorite for me. Also, he was so sweet with his sister. They had a lot of family drama. Both sides had family drama, but in very, very different ways. And I just liked it. I thought it was fun. Gave it 3 stars. Would probably have rated it a little bit higher if it wasn't as sex heavy, but that's okay. I liked it. It was fun, and it was like a perfect witchy read. Our next section is going to be books that came out much like a couple of years ago that I just never got around to reading, which honestly have been on my TBR forever. And the first one is Anna Dressed in Blood by Kendare Blake. This is a book that I have wanted to read for so long. So long. I love this book. This is probably the highest rated book on this whole reading, like on this whole little video. I gave this book like 5 stars. I really loved it. You basically follow this guy named Cass, and he is a ghost hunter, and he kind of changes his locations like every couple of months to kind of take down these ghosts. But when he encounters Anna in this small town, his world and her world just sort of turned upside down. Cass has to start to investigate how he can get rid of Anna, and he has a trio of characters working to help him. I adore this book. I definitely have to get up to Girl of Nightmares because it ended on like a really big cliffhanger, and I'm really curious how we're gonna have book 2. But I loved it. This book had so many elements that I liked. A male lead. It also had a really interesting relationship between Kaz and Anna that I didn't necessarily see coming. There's also a trio of characters that were working, and just a really interesting small town. It was sort of a timeless story that I think could have happened modern day, but also could have happened in the 40s. It was great. I really, really enjoyed it, and I am dying to read Girl of Nightmares soon. But this one was very, very fun. The other book that I picked up is another very, very popular paranormal series, and that is Born Wicked by Jessica Spotswood. I went into this one a little bit hesitant because the people that I said that read it recently really didn't enjoy it, but I did, and I think it's more to do with the romance at the heart of it. It reminded me almost of reading like a Regency romance because that's the time period set, but you basically follow these three girls. You follow one character. Oh, I cannot think of her name. But it's the Cahill family, and there's three sisters. They all are they're all witches, but witches in this time period is outlawed. So if they find out you're a witch, you're going to be like basically exiled. But when the older sister realizes that things are not what she expects, and she's going to kind of be put into a courtship, her magic sort of becomes revealed. She has to try to protect her sisters. There's a really, really sweet romance, which I was so worried about because normally in books this old, the romances I like don't ever get chosen, but it seemed like it's the primary romance in the story. I really do want to read Star Curse just to see how I'm feeling, but overall, I really enjoyed this book. So yeah, those are the top like fall themed reads that I read relatively recently. Let me know in the comments what are some fall reads that you read in 2021 that you really liked, and I'll talk to you for my next video. Bye, friends.